Did you know that all of Western science comes from a principle put forth by a friar, by a theologian, not what we would consider today a scientist, but what we would consider today essentially a monk? And that principle is called Occam's razor. Occam's razor, when we state it colloquially, is if you have competing explanations for an observation, if you see something, you have more than one way to explain it, you go with whatever is the simpler explanation. We can look at this ridiculous example. It's a windy day, a tree falls down. You could say that the wind blew the tree down, or you could say this. There's two meteorites. One meteorite hit the tree. The second meteorite obliterated the first meteorite 1 second later, getting rid of all the evidence of that meteorite. Or you could get more ridiculous. Aliens in some invisible spacecraft knocked that tree down with their death ray. How do we pick the right explanation? We use Occam's razor. And Occam's razor says, whatever is the simpler explanation, go with that one. Now notice that is an assumption. It's a postulate. It's not something we can prove to be true. It's the assumption on which we base all of Western science. Here is a real, an important historical example of this. This is the Ptolemaic universe. That's the Earth-centered solar system. And if you put the Earth at the center, you end up with all kinds of craziness for the rest of the planets. The rest of the planets have to move in these very complex shapes. They have epicycles, they have deferment, they have all these kinds of weird patterns and motions. Or we can go with the Copernican system, which puts the sun at the center of the solar system, and everything becomes much simpler. Both of these work. That's the key thing. Both of these can accurately predict the behavior of the planets. But this one, the Copernican system, requires fewer assumptions. It's simpler. So we say that this is the correct assumption. I see a lot of people showing that they don't really get science. Here is an image that illustrates one of the ongoing debates in education in America, which is, should we teach kids to believe in evolution, or should we teach kids to believe in intelligent design or creationism? Neither of those is any way to teach science. Either of those is just teaching a belief. Here's the thing about science. Everything we believe today, at some future point, is going to be disproven. Everything that the best scientists in the world believed 500 years ago, today would be considered laughably silly. It's not because they were bad scientists. It's because they gave the model that fit all the observations they had at that time, the simplest model. Today we have more observations, so we need different models that fit all of the new observations. You know, when Einstein proved that a lot of Newton's theories were insufficient, it was largely because he had observations, he had data that Newton did not have. There's a good chance that Newton, given that same information, would have come up with the same theories as Einstein. Newton wasn't a bad scientist. He was a great, incredible scientist. He just didn't have the same data that later scientists had. Science is not about learning the right facts. That would be stupid because they're all going to be proven false in 100 years anyway. Science is about learning a process that's going to be with us for as long as science exists. And that process is looking at the observations and figuring out what system, what set of theories best explains those observations. And by best explains, it means explains it with the smallest number of assumptions, with the smallest and least bizarre and least grandiose assumptions. That's what science is. It's not about memorizing facts. When you do science with us, you're not really going to be truly doing science yet. You're first going to look at some of the results of science, these scientific facts and theories. These aren't science. That's not science. That's what science produces. And so get familiar with what science has produced, with the theories that science has produced, but don't confuse it for a second with science. Science is the process of coming up with those theories, coming up with theories that most simply fit all the given facts.